Steel flashed in Amaya Walker's eyes as she ran her palm over her freshly shaved head. The laughter of Brett Carson and his cronies still rang in her ears, along with the sickening sound of scissors hacking through her hair. "Welcome to Westbridge," they'd sneered, leaving her humiliated on the locker room floor. Now, in the garage-turned-war room, Amaya watched her father, retired Navy SEAL Lieutenant Commander Elijah Walker, pin photos to a tactical board. "They chose the wrong target," he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of missions in territories most Americans couldn't find on a map. Westbridge Prep had rules. The elite stayed on top, outsiders knew their place, and no one challenged the status quo. But Amaya and her father played by different rules. She fingered the military dog tags around her neck and nodded. Brett Carson thought he'd broken her spirit. Instead, he'd activated 16 years of combat training and a warrior's resolve that would bring his entire kingdom crashing down. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. The modest two-story house on Maple Street stood out among its neighbors, not because of its appearance, but because of who now lived inside. The moving truck had barely pulled away when 16-year-old Amaya Walker stepped onto the porch, taking in the pristine lawns and identical mailboxes of Westbridge Estates. "So this is suburbia," Amaya said, tucking a strand of her long, natural hair behind her ear. "It's quiet." Behind her, Lieutenant Commander Elijah Walker set down a heavy box labeled kitchen and joined his daughter. His broad shoulders and military posture contrasted with the softness in his eyes when he looked at Amaya. "Too quiet for you?" he asked, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. Amaya shrugged. "Just different. I'm used to hearing the ocean." Their previous home near the naval base had been their anchor for years. But after Elijah's retirement and the death of his wife, Amaya's mother, during his last mission abroad, they needed a fresh start. Westbridge, with its highly rated schools and low crime rate, seemed perfect on paper. "You'll adjust," Elijah said, squeezing her shoulder. "We both will." The next morning, Amaya stood in front of Westbridge Preparatory Academy, an imposing brick building with ivy-covered walls and a history dating back to 1892, according to the plaque near the entrance. Students streamed past her, some casting curious glances her way, others pretending not to notice her at all. Taking a deep breath, Amaya walked through the front doors. The hallways were a blur of activity, students at lockers, teachers hurrying to classrooms, maintenance staff mopping floors. As she made her way to the administration office, Amaya couldn't help but notice the whispers that followed her. "Is she new? I heard her dad's military or something. Diversity scholarship probably." Amaya kept her head high, remembering her father's words from that morning. "Remember who you are, Amaya. A Walker never shows weakness." In the principal's office, Mrs. Harrison, a thin woman with platinum blonde hair pulled into a severe bun, handed Amaya her schedule. "Westbridge Prep has a proud tradition of excellence," Mrs. Harrison said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "We expect all our students to uphold that tradition." "Yes, ma'am," Amaya replied, meeting the principal's gaze steadily. Mrs. Harrison's eyebrows rose slightly. "Your father's military background shows in your manners. That's refreshing." Amaya's first classes passed in a haze of introductions and curious stares. By lunchtime, she had yet to make any real connections. She found an empty table in the cafeteria and unpacked the lunch her father had prepared, a habit he'd maintained since her elementary school days. As she ate, Amaya observed the social landscape around her. The tables seemed segregated by invisible boundaries. Athletes here, drama kids there, honor students in the corner. And at the center of it all was a table of students who radiated confidence and privilege. A tall boy with sandy blonde hair sat at the head of that table, his arm draped casually around a pretty girl with straight copper hair. He caught Amaya looking and smirked, whispering something to his friends that made them laugh. "That's Brett Carson," said a voice beside Amaya. A girl with curly brown hair and kind eyes slid into the seat across from her. "I'm Grace, by the way," Grace Thompson. Amaya Walker, Amaya replied, grateful for the friendly face. Brett's dad is the mayor, Grace explained. And Brett's the quarterback, so he basically owns the school. Or thinks he does anyway. And the girl with him? Lexi Parker, his on-again, off-again girlfriend. She's not on the cheer squad anymore. Got injured last year, but she still acts like the queen bee. After lunch, Amaya noticed a flyer for cheer tryouts posted on the activities board. Back at her old school, she'd been on the gymnastics team, earning state recognition for her floor routines. Cheerleading wasn't exactly the same, but close enough. You should try out, Grace said, appearing at her side. Coach Williams is actually pretty cool, not like some of the other teachers who play favorites. 2 days later, Amaya stood in the gymnasium with 15 other girls, waiting for her turn to perform. Coach Williams, a former college cheerleader with a no-nonsense attitude, had them demonstrate basic jumps, tumbling passes, and stunts. When Amaya's turn came, she channeled all her gymnastics training into a flawless routine. Her tumbling passes were precise, her jumps high and clean. For her final move, she executed a perfect standing full twist, something none of the other girls had attempted. A hushed silence fell over the gym, followed by scattered applause. Well, Coach Williams said, failing to hide her impressed expression. That was unexpected. From the bleachers, where some football players were lounging after practice, Brett Carson watched with narrowed eyes. Beside him, his teammates Kyle, Mason, and Troy leaned forward with interest. Looks like we've got new talent, Coach announced to the group. Amaya, I'd like to see you as a flyer in our competition routine. A murmur ran through the group of girls. One of them, a senior named Heather, stepped forward. But Coach, I've been the lead flyer since sophomore year. And now you'll be supporting Amaya, Coach replied firmly. Her tumbling skills are exactly what we need to place at nationals this year. Later, as Amaya was gathering her things, she overheard Brett talking to his friends near the water fountain. So the new girl thinks she can just waltz in and take over, he said, loud enough for her to hear. Wonder how long that'll last. Did you see those moves, though? Troy said. Girl's got skills. Brett shot him a look. She's got something, all right. Probably just affirmative action cheerleading. They laughed, and Amaya felt her cheeks burn. She shouldered her gym bag and walked past them with her head high. Nice routine, new girl, Brett called after her, his tone making the compliment feel like an insult. Hope you can handle the pressure. That evening, Amaya followed her father into the woods behind their new house. Despite his retirement, Elijah Walker maintained the disciplined physicality of an active Navy SEAL. He'd set up a makeshift training course, rope swings, balance beams made from fallen trees, and a series of targets for their regular self-defense practice. How was school? Elijah asked as they warmed up with stretches. I made the cheer team, Amaya replied, reaching for her toes. As the lead flyer, Elijah's face broke into a rare, full smile. That's my girl. Your mother would be proud. The mention of her mother made Amaya's throat tighten. It had been just over a year since the accident during Elijah's final mission, a helicopter crash that had claimed the lives of both Sarah Walker and 2 other SEAL team members. I miss her, Amaya said softly. Elijah's expression softened. Me, too, baby girl, every day, he cleared his throat. Now let's work on your evasive maneuvers. Remember, the best way to win a fight is to avoid it completely. Amaya finished with a small smile. It was one of her father's favorite sayings, drilled into her since she was 10 years old, and he'd first started teaching her self-defense. For boss, the next hour they trained. Elijah teaching Amaya how to break holds, escape from restraints, and use an attacker's weight against them. These sessions had become more frequent after Sarah's death, as if Elijah was determined to ensure his daughter could protect herself from any threat. You're getting stronger, he noted, as Amaya successfully flipped him over her shoulder, a move that would have been impossible a year ago. I have a good teacher, she replied, helping him up. The first pep rally of the school year came the following Friday. The gymnasium was packed with students, teachers, and parents, all dressed in Westbridge's colors of navy and gold. The cheerleaders performed their routine, with Amaya executing flawless aerials and being tossed higher than any flyer before her. The crowd erupted in cheers. Even some of the teachers were on their feet. Amaya caught sight of her father in the back of the gym, his proud smile visible even from a distance. As the football team ran into thunderous applause, Brett jogged past the cheer squad. He slowed as he passed Amaya. "Don't get too comfortable in the spotlight," he said under his breath, then flashed his winning smile to the crowd. Later, in the hallway, Amaya felt her phone buzz with notifications. Anonymous texts were flooding in. "Show off. Who does she think she is? Charity case. Go back where you came from." Amaya stared at her phone, her stomach knotting with anger and hurt. As she rounded the corner, she nearly collided with Grace. "Hey, I was looking for you," Grace said, then noticed Amaya's expression. "What's wrong?" Wordlessly, Amaya showed her the texts. Grace's face fell. "I'm so sorry. This happens sometimes, when someone new shakes things up." "By someone new, you mean someone black?" Amaya said flatly. Grace had the decency to look ashamed. "It's not right. Not everyone thinks that way, I promise. But enough." "Do," Amaya replied, putting her phone away. "And the rest just watch." That night, Amaya sat on the back porch, watching as her father cleaned his service pistol, a ritual he performed every Friday night, more out of habit than necessity now. "Dad," she said hesitantly, "how did you deal with it? In the Navy, I mean. Being one of the few Black SEALs." Elijah's hand stilled. "Who's giving you trouble?" "Just some kids at school, anonymous texts." She showed him her phone. Elijah's jaw tightened as he read the messages. For a moment, Amaya saw a flash of the warrior her father had been, still was, underneath the calm exterior he maintained. "Listen to me," he said, setting the gun aside. "People fear what they don't understand, and sometimes that fear makes them cruel." He took her hand. "But you are a walker. You come from a long line of people who refuse to break, no matter what life threw at them." He went inside and returned with a small box. From it, he removed a set of dog tags. "These were mine from my first deployment," he said, placing them around her neck. "When things get tough, remember, they fear what they don't understand. Let's make sure they never figure." "You out," Amaya clutched the tags. "I won't let them win." "I know you won't," Elijah said with a fierce pride in his eyes. Across town in the basement of the Carson family's sprawling colonial home, Brett was holding court with his friends. Empty beer cans littered the coffee table, and music played, softly in the background. "She's making us look bad," Brett was saying, his words slightly slurred. "Coach is acting like she's the second coming of cheerleading Jesus or something." "She is pretty good," Kyle admitted, earning a glare from Brett. "That's not the point," Brett snapped. "She needs to learn her place." Troy, the most volatile of the group, leaned forward. "So what are we going to do about it?" Brett's mouth curved into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I've got some ideas. Let's remind her whose turf this is." The others exchanged glances, Mason looking uncomfortable, Kyle uncertain, Troy eager, but none of them challenged Brett. They never did. 2 weeks after making the cheer squad, Amaya was staying late after practice to work on a new tumbling pass. The gym was nearly empty. Coach Williams had stepped out to take a phone call, and most of the other cheerleaders had left. Marina, a quiet junior who rarely spoke during practice, was the only other girl still there, organizing the equipment closet. Outside, the fall afternoon was fading into evening, casting long shadows through the high windows of the gymnasium. Amaya was mid-backflip when the gym doors banged open. Brett sauntered in, followed by Troy, Kyle, and Mason. They were still, in their football practice gear, grass stains on their knees. "Well, look who's still here," Brett called out, his voice echoing in the empty space. "The star of Westbridge Prep." Amaya landed her flip and straightened, her guard immediately up. "Practice is over. Cheerleaders only right now." Brett laughed, looking back at his friends. "Hear that? We're not welcome." Troy stepped forward, twirling a football in his hands. "That's not very school spirit of you." Marina emerged from the equipment closet, saw the boys, and froze. Her eyes darted nervously. Between them and Amaya, "Hey, Marina," Mason called out, his tone softer than the others. "Coach wants to see Amaya in his office. We said we'd let her know." Marina hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "I didn't hear anything about that." "Just got the message," Kyle added, smoothly. "Something about the routine for the game tomorrow." Amaya looked skeptically at the boys, then at Marina. "Where's Coach Williams?" "Phone call," Marina said. "She's been gone about 10 minutes. Brett stepped closer to Amaya, his smile all charm now. "Look, Coach is in a hurry. He sent us to get you. The boys' locker room has been converted to an office space this week during renovations. Didn't you get the memo?" Amaya didn't believe him for a second, but she also didn't want to appear intimidated. "Fine, I'll go check." "Marina, you can head out," Brett added. "We'll make sure Amaya finds her way." Marina looked torn, her eyes meeting Amaya's briefly before she nodded. "Okay. See you tomorrow, Amaya." As Marina gathered her things and left, Amaya felt a flicker of unease, but she squared her shoulders and followed Brett toward the locker rooms, maintaining a careful distance. "So, new girl," Brett said as they walked. "How are you liking Westbridge so far?" "It's fine," Amaya replied curtly. "Just fine. With the way everyone's fawning over you, I'd think you'd be loving it." They reached the boys' locker room. Brett pushed the door open and gestured for her to enter. Amaya hesitated at the threshold. "Ladies first," Brett said with a mocking bow. "I'm not going in there," Amaya said firmly. "If Coach wants to see me, he can find me in the gym." Brett's friendly facade dropped. "Don't be difficult. We're just trying to help." Amaya turned to leave, but Troy and Kyle had moved to block her path. The hallway was empty, the sounds of the school distant and muffled. "Move," Amaya said, her voice steady despite the fear beginning to creep up her spine. Instead, Troy grabbed her arm. Instinctively, Amaya twisted, breaking his grip just as her father had taught her. But before she could escape, Brett seized her from behind, pinning her arms. "Let go of me," she shouted, struggling against his hold. "Not yet," Brett said, his voice now cold. "First, we need to have a chat about respect and tradition." Kyle and Mason moved to the doors, standing guard. Troy grabbed Amaya's legs as Brett wrestled her into the locker room. Despite her training, 2 against 1 left her, at a disadvantage, especially when caught by surprise. Inside, the locker room smelled of sweat and industrial cleaner. Brett forced Amaya onto a bench, keeping her pinned while Troy held her legs. Mason stood nervously by the door, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. "What are you doing?" Amaya demanded, still fighting against their hold. Kyle approached, pulling something from his pocket. The overhead lights gleamed off the metal surface of a pair of scissors. Amaya's eyes widened. "Don't you dare." "Your hair's too distracting during routines," Brett said with mock concern. "We're just helping you with a little makeover." "The team voted," Troy added with a cruel smile. "This is a Westbridge tradition for new members who need to learn their place." Amaya knew it was a lie. She'd seen no evidence of such a tradition with any other cheerleader. This was targeted. This was personal. "Let me go, or I swear." "You'll what?" Brett interrupted. "Tell Daddy? Go ahead. By then, it'll be too late." Kyle stepped forward with the scissors. Amaya thrashed wildly, but Brett and Troy held her firmly. With rough hacking motions, Kyle began to cut chunks of her hair. Amaya screamed, the sound echoing off the tile walls. "No one can hear you," Brett whispered, "and no one would believe you anyway." Long, beautiful sections of Amaya's natural hair fell to the floor. Tears streamed down her face, not of sadness but of pure rage. Through her tears, she noticed Mason filming with his phone, his expression a mixture of reluctance and twisted fascination. "For the yearbook," Brett explained, seeing her notice. "Special memories section." When they finished, Amaya's hair was a chopped, uneven mess. Brett finally released her, shoving her toward the mirror above the sinks. "There," he said. "Much better." Amaya stared at her reflection, barely recognizing herself. Her hair, the hair her mother had loved, had taught her to care for, was destroyed. Short, jagged pieces stuck out at odd angles. Longer sections hung limply, emphasizing the damage. "You're going to regret this," she said, her voice low and trembling with fury. Brett laughed. "What are you gonna do? It's your word against ours. And in case you haven't noticed, my dad runs this town." The boys filed out, leaving Amaya alone in the locker room. She stayed there, frozen before the mirror, until the janitor found her 30 minutes later and gently suggested she go home. Outside, the sun had set completely. Amaya walked home in the dark, her gym bag pulled up to cover her ruined hair. Tears continued to fall, mixed now with anger and humiliation. With each step, she felt something hardening inside her, a resolve, a promise. When she reached home, she slipped in through the back door, hoping to make it to her room before her father saw her. But Elijah was in the kitchen, preparing dinner. He turned as she entered, a greeting dying on his lips as he took in her appearance. "Amaya," he whispered, setting down the knife he'd been using to chop vegetables. What happened? She couldn't speak. The tears came again in a flood, and she collapsed into her father's arms, sobbing against his chest. Elijah held her tightly, one hand gently touching the ragged remains of her hair. "Who did this to you?" he asked, his voice deadly calm. Between sobs, Amaya told him everything. Brett, his friends, the ambush, the scissors, the phone recording. Elijah listened, his expression growing darker with each detail. When she finished, he led her to the bathroom and gently helped her wash what remained of her hair. Then, with careful hands, he tried to even out the worst of the damage. "We should call the police," Elijah said, meeting her eyes in the mirror. Amaya shook her head. "Brett's dad is the mayor. The police chief plays golf with him every Sunday. You think they'll take my side?" Elijah's jaw clenched. "Then we go to the school." "And say what?" "They have a video that they've probably already edited to make it look like a joke, like I agreed to it." She turned to face her father, her eyes red but dry now. "No, I need to handle this my way." "Amaya." "You've been training me since I was 10, Dad," she interrupted. "You taught me to defend myself, to be strong. But what good is any of that if I can't use it when it matters?" Elijah was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. "You'll decide how this ends, but when you're ready, we fight smart." The next day, Amaya stayed home from school. She couldn't face the stares, the whispers, the inevitable video that would be circulating. Instead, she sat in her bedroom, staring at her phone as notifications flooded in. A Snapchat video was making the rounds, her screaming in the locker room, but with the sound distorted to make it seem like she was laughing. The caption read, "New girl's initiation, welcome to Westbridge." Texts from unknown numbers continued to pour in. "Nice haircut. Guess you're not so special now. Go back to where you came from, psycho." One text, however, stood out. It was from Grace. "I heard what happened. This isn't right, I'm so sorry." Amaya didn't respond to any of them. Instead, she called Coach Williams. "Amaya," the coach answered, concern evident in her voice. "Are you okay? You missed practice." "I need to report something," Amaya said, her voice steady now. "Brett Carson and his friends attacked me yesterday. They cut my hair against my will." There was a long pause. "That's a serious accusation. It's the truth. Do you have any proof? Witnesses?" "They filmed it, but I doubt they'll share the unedited version." Another pause. "I'll speak to Principal Harrison. But Amaya, Brett's family has a lot of influence here. Without concrete evidence." "I understand," Amaya said, though what she understood was that justice wouldn't come through official channels. After hanging up, Amaya went to find her father. He was in the garage, setting up what looked like a war room, maps of the town pinned to a corkboard, a whiteboard with names written in his precise handwriting, and several electronic devices she didn't recognize. "Dad?" Elijah turned. "I've been thinking about what you said, about fighting smart." He gestured to the setup. "This is how SEALs prepare for an operation. We gather intelligence, identify weak points, and plan for every contingency." Amaya stepped closer, examining the board. Brett's name was at the top, with Kyle, Troy, and Mason branching off from it. Below them were other names, teachers, school board members, the principal. "What is all this?" "The battlefield," Elijah replied. You can't win a war if you don't know the terrain or the enemy. For the first time since the attack, Amaya felt a spark of hope. Teach me. Elijah's expression was grim but determined. First. Lesson: in war you need evidence, documentation, proof. He pulled out a small device from a box labeled surveillance. This, he said, is how we start. That evening, Elijah shared a memory from his SEAL days, a mission where bad intelligence had nearly cost his entire unit their lives. We trusted the wrong source, he explained as they sat on the back porch. Almost walked into an ambush because we didn't verify the information ourselves. What did you do? Amaya asked. We set up our own surveillance, gathered our own intel, and when we finally moved in, we knew exactly what we were walking into. He looked at her seriously. That's what you need to do. Observe, document, wait for them to make mistakes, because they will. The next day was Saturday. Amaya stood in front of her bathroom mirror, studying what remained of her hair. No amount of styling could salvage it. Making a decision, she picked up her father's electric razor. By Sunday night, Amaya had a plan. With Elijah's help, she'd created a detailed map of the school, identifying security camera blind spots and potential locations for their own surveillance devices. Remember, Elijah said as they reviewed the plan, the goal isn't just to catch them in the act, it's to expose the whole system that protects them. Monday morning arrived, and Amaya stood at her bedroom door, hesitating. Her father appeared. In the hallway, concern etched on his face. You don't have to go back yet, he said. No one would blame you for taking more time. Amaya shook her head. If I don't go back now, I never will. She walked downstairs and grabbed her backpack. When she turned, Elijah was watching her with a mixture of pride and worry. You look strong, he said simply. Amaya touched her newly shaved head, feeling strangely powerful. I am strong. The whispers started the moment she walked through the school doors. Students stared openly, conversations halting mid-sentence, but Amaya kept her head high, the dog tags around her neck giving her courage. In first period, Mr. Daniels, her history teacher, gave her a nod of respect as she took her seat. Later, she noticed him watching Brett with narrowed eyes. When the quarterback made a snide comment about radical makeovers. By lunchtime, the entire school was buzzing. Amaya sat alone until Grace appeared, sliding into the seat across from her. I like it, Grace said, gesturing to Amaya's shaved head. It's badass. Thanks, Amaya replied, a small smile breaking through her serious expression. I heard what happened, Grace continued, lowering her voice. Everyone's talking about it, but most people think it was some kind of hazing that you agreed to. It wasn't. I know, and I want to help if I can. Amaya studied her, weighing whether to trust her. Finally, she nodded. Maybe you can. That afternoon, Amaya attended cheer practice. The other girls fell silent when she entered the locker room. Coach Williams approached her immediately. Amaya, I spoke with Principal Harrison about your accusation. And? Coach sighed. She says without witnesses or concrete evidence, there's nothing she can do. It would be your word against theirs. I understand, Amaya said, her voice cool. Is there a problem with me continuing on the squad? No, of course not, as long as you feel comfortable. I do. The practice was tense at first, but as Amaya performed her routines with even more precision and power than before, the mood shifted. By the end, several of the girls were complimenting her new look and the fierce energy she brought to the performance. After practice, Marina approached her tentatively. I'm sorry about what happened, she whispered. I should have stayed with you that day. It's not your fault, Amaya replied. Marina glanced around nervously. I'm dating Mason. He told me what they did. He feels terrible, but not terrible enough to come forward. Marina looked away. He's afraid of Brett. We all are. Amaya touched the dog tags around her neck. Not me. Not anymore. That Friday, at the pep rally, Amaya performed with a new intensity. Her tumbling passes were flawless, her stunts breathtaking. The crowd roared with approval, drowning out the few jeers from Brett's loyal supporters. As she finished the routine, Amaya locked eyes with Brett in the front row of the bleachers. His smirk had been replaced by a scowl of disbelief. "This isn't over," he mouthed at her. Amaya allowed herself a small smile. "I know," she mouthed back. But what Brett didn't know was that the game had changed, and this time, Amaya was making the rules. In the stands, Elijah watched with fierce pride as his daughter transformed her pain into power. He knew the road ahead would be difficult, but he also knew Amaya was ready. The battle had just begun. The Sunday after the pep rally, Amaya and her father sat at the kitchen table surrounded by small devices that looked like tiny cameras and microphones. "These are surveillance units," Elijah explained, showing her how to activate them. "Military grade, but modified for civilian use. They're motion activated and can record up to 12 hours of footage." Amaya picked one up, examining the nearly invisible lens. "And these are legal?" "In public spaces, yes," Elijah said. "The locker rooms are trickier. We'll need to be careful about placement there. Hallways are fair game." They spent the afternoon planning what Elijah called Operation Reveal Them. By nightfall, they had mapped out the school's layout, identifying optimal locations for their surveillance. "Remember," Elijah said as they prepared for bed, "this isn't just about catching them doing something wrong. It's about exposing the pattern, showing that this wasn't an isolated incident." The next morning, Amaya arrived at school early, her backpack containing 3 of the tiny cameras. She moved with purpose, slipping one device into a vent near Brett's locker, another behind a trophy case in the main hallway, and the third, after carefully checking for witnesses, on a high shelf in the boys' locker room entrance. As she finished placing the final camera, a voice behind her made her jump. "What are you doing?" Amaya spun around to find Marina watching her with curious eyes. "Nothing," Amaya said quickly, adjusting her backpack. "Just looking for something I dropped." Marina didn't seem convinced. She glanced at the shelf, then back at Amaya. "I saw what they did to you," she said quietly. "The real version, not the one they're showing everyone." Amaya stiffened. "What do you mean?" "Mason showed me the video before they edited it. I heard you screaming, saw them holding you down." Marina's eyes filled with tears. "I should have stayed that day. I knew something was wrong." "Why are you telling me this now?" Marina looked around nervously. "Because I'm tired of being scared. And because—" She hesitated. "Because they've done this before. Not exactly this, but similar things. To other girls, to kids they think don't belong." Amaya studied her, weighing whether to trust her. "Are you willing to say that officially? To Principal Harrison?" Marina's face paled. "I can't. Mason would—" "What? Break up with you? Is that really worse than letting them hurt more people?" Marina looked away. "You don't understand. It's not just about Mason. Brett's dad is the mayor. His family controls everything in this town. They could make life impossible for my family. My dad works for the city." Amaya felt her anger rising but forced herself to stay calm. Getting angry at Marina wouldn't help. "What if you didn't have to say anything officially? What if there was another way you could help?" "What do you mean?" "You date Mason. You hear things, see things. All I'm asking is that you keep your eyes and ears open." Marina hesitated, then nodded. "I can do that. And I'm sorry, Amaya. For what it's worth, I think what you're doing is brave." After Marina left, Amaya felt a small spark of hope. Maybe she wasn't as alone in this fight as she'd thought. Throughout the week, Amaya collected footage from the cameras, carefully reviewing each recording with her father in their makeshift war room. Most of it was mundane, students chatting, walking to class, complaining about homework, but occasionally they caught glimpses of Brett and his friends talking in hushed tones, looking over their shoulders. "They're nervous," Elijah observed. "Good. Nervous people make mistakes." On Thursday, Amaya was surprised when Lexi Parker approached her after school. Lexi, Brett's on-again, off-again girlfriend, had mostly ignored Amaya since her arrival at Westbridge. Can we talk? Lexi asked, glancing around to make sure no one was watching. Amaya nodded, and they walked to a quiet corner of the campus. I heard what Brett did to you, Lexi said without preamble. The real story, not the BS version everyone's talking about. And I've seen him do things like this before. Not as bad, maybe, but the same kind of cruelty. Lexi's voice wavered. He's dating Heather now, but he's still trying to control who I can talk to, who I can date. Why are you telling me this? Lexi pulled out her phone. Because I have something you might want. From last year. Brett and his friends trashing the special education classroom after hours. They thought it was hilarious to mess up the students' projects. She played a video showing Brett, Troy, and Kyle laughing as they tore down posters and knocked over carefully arranged materials in a classroom. Why didn't you report this? Amaya asked. Because I was stupid and in love, Lexi said bitterly. And because no one would have believed me over Brett anyway. Do you want this to stop? Yes, Lexi said firmly. I'm dating someone new now. Tom from the debate team. Brett keeps threatening. Him saying he'll make sure Tom doesn't get his scholarship. I'm sick of it, Amaya nodded. Send me that video, and if you have anything else, I'll keep looking, Lexi promised. That night, Amaya and Elijah reviewed the new evidence. The video from Lexi clearly showed Brett's face as he mocked students with disabilities. Combined with their surveillance footage, they were beginning to build a case. It's time for phase 2, Elijah said. Psychological warfare. The next day, Brett and his friends each found anonymous notes in their lockers. Each contained a blurred, still from the surveillance footage with a simple message. I know what you did. The effect was immediate and visible. During lunch, Amaya watched as Brett huddled with Kyle, Troy, and Mason, their expressions tense. They kept looking around, as if trying to identify who might be watching them. Mason, in particular, looked terrified. Twice he glanced in Amaya's direction, quickly looking away when she caught his eye. After school, Amaya was emptying her locker when she noticed Brett and Troy watching her from down the hall. They whispered to each other. Then Brett approached, his smile not reaching his eyes. Nice haircut, he said, nodding at her shaved head. Very militant. Amaya met his gaze coolly. Did you need something? Just wondering how you're adjusting. Westbridge can be tough for outsiders. I'm managing just fine. Brett leaned closer. Are you? Because it seems like you're having trouble fitting in. Maybe you should consider transferring somewhere more diverse. Amaya refused to be intimidated. I like it here. In fact, I think I'll stick around for a long time. Brett's smile tightened. We'll see about that. The next morning, Amaya arrived at school to find her locker surrounded by security guards and Principal Harrison. The principal's expression was grave as she approached. Miss Walker, we need to search your locker. We've received information that stolen items from the science lab may be inside. Amaya's stomach dropped. That's ridiculous, I didn't steal anything. Nevertheless, we need to check. As the security guard opened her locker, Amaya wasn't surprised to see several expensive microscope lenses tucked behind her books, items she had never seen before.
These were reported missing yesterday, Principal Harrison said, her voice cold. Care to explain how they ended up in your locker? They're not mine, Amaya said firmly. Someone planted them. A serious accusation. Do you have any proof? Amaya
thought of the cameras, but none had been positioned to view her locker directly. Not yet. Then I'm afraid you'll need to come with me. You're suspended pending an investigation. As security escorted her to the office, Amaya caught sight of Brett watching from around the corner, a satisfied smirk on his face. This was his countermove, and for the moment he had the upper hand. In Principal Harrison's office, Amaya sat silently as the principal called her father. 20 minutes later, Elijah arrived, his expression carefully controlled. Mr. Walker, Principal Harrison began, I'm afraid Amaya has been caught with stolen property in her locker. Has she? Elijah's voice was deceptively calm. That seems unlikely. The evidence suggests otherwise. Evidence can be misleading, Elijah countered. especially when it's been manipulated. Principal Harrison frowned. Are you suggesting someone framed your daughter? I'm not suggesting it. I'm stating it as fact, and I think we both know who would have a motive to do so. The principal shifted uncomfortably. Without proof, Mr. Walker, we have to follow protocol. Amaya is suspended for 3 days while we investigate. Elijah stood, straightening to his full military height. Very well, but this isn't over, Mrs. Harrison. Not by a long shot. As they left the office, Amaya felt a mixture of anger and defeat. They're winning, she said once they were in the car. No, Elijah replied firmly. They just think they are.
This is exactly what we needed. Proof that they're willing to go to extreme lengths to discredit you. Now, we escalate. The next day, while Amaya was officially suspended, Elijah paid a visit to the school. He requested a meeting with Principal Harrison, who reluctantly agreed to see him.
Mr. Walker, she began, I understand you're upset, but I'm not upset, Elijah interrupted, his voice level. I'm determined. My daughter was assaulted on school property. Now she's being framed for theft, and you're doing nothing about it. That's not fair. We're investigating. Are you? Or are you simply going through the motions while protecting the real culprits? Elijah leaned forward. Brett Carson and his friends attacked my daughter. They held her down and cut her hair against her will. And instead of protecting her, this school is punishing her for being victimized. Principal Harrison's face tightened. Those are serious accusations, Mr. Walker, but without concrete evidence, evidence can be arranged, Elijah said quietly. I'm giving you one chance to do the right thing. Launch a real investigation. Suspend Brett and his friends pending that investigation. Or I take this to the school board, the media, and if necessary, the Department of Education's Civil Rights Division. The threat hung in the air between them. Principal Harrison studied him for a long moment. I'll speak with the superintendent, she finally said, but I can't promise anything. The Carson family has significant influence here. So do I, Elijah replied, standing to leave. You just don't know it yet. As Elijah was leaving the school, he was surprised to be approached by Mr. Daniels, Amaya's history teacher. Mr. Walker, do you have a moment? They walked to Mr. Daniels' classroom, which was empty during the lunch period. I want you to know, Mr. Daniels said once they were alone, that I believe your daughter, and I have something that might help. He pulled out his phone and showed Elijah a series of videos, hallway footage of Brett and his friends following. Amaya, making threatening gestures when her back was turned. I've been documenting their behavior for weeks, Mr. Daniels explained. Not just toward Amaya, but toward several students. I've brought it to the administration before, but nothing ever happens. Why? Elijah asked. Why does everyone protect these boys? Mr. Daniels sighed. Brett's father donates generously to the school. His family has buildings named after them. And in a town this size, crossing the mayor is a good way to find yourself unemployed. But you're willing to help now? Yes, Mr. Oth, Daniels said firmly. What they did to your daughter, that crossed a line. And I'm tired of watching good kids suffer while these boys get away with everything. Elijah felt a surge of hope. Would you be willing to testify at a school board hearing? If it comes to that, yes. When Elijah returned home, he found Amaya sitting at the kitchen table, working on her laptop. How did it go? She asked. Better than expected, Elijah replied, setting down his keys. We have an ally. Your history teacher, Mr. Daniels. Amaya's eyes widened. Really? What did he say? As Elijah explained, Amaya's expression shifted from surprise to determination. So, we're not alone. We never were, Elijah said. The problem is getting people to speak up. Fear is a powerful silencer. Then we need to be louder, Amaya said, turning her laptop to show him what she'd been working on. A carefully edited video montage of their surveillance footage, combined with Lexi's video and screenshots of the anonymous texts she'd received. This is good, Elijah said, reviewing the footage. But we need more. Something definitive that links Brett directly to both the hair-cutting incident and the locker setup. That evening, as they were discussing next steps, there was a knock at the door. Elijah answered to find an unexpected visitor. Mayor Richard Carson, Brett's father. Lieutenant Commander Walker, the mayor said with a politician's smile. I thought it was time we met, neighbor to neighbor. Elijah's expression remained neutral as he invited the mayor inside. Richard Carson was a tall man with the same sandy hair as his son, though his was graying at the temples. He carried himself with the entitled confidence of someone unaccustomed to hearing the word no. I understand there's been some unpleasantness between our children, the mayor began once they were seated in the living room. That's one way to put it, Elijah replied coolly. Boys will be boys, you know. High school pranks get out of hand sometimes. What happened to my daughter wasn't a prank, Mayor Carson, it was assault. The mayor's smile tightened. That's a serious allegation, one that could be damaging to all involved if it were made publicly. Is that a threat? Not at all. Just an observation. The mayor leaned forward. I'm here to offer a solution. The school is prepared to rescind Amaya's suspension. In return, we all agree to put this unfortunate incident behind us. And Brett faces no consequences. My son has already been disciplined privately, the mayor said smoothly. I assure you the message has been received. Elijah studied the man across from him, recognizing the tactics. He'd seen similar approaches from corrupt officials in war zones, offering compromises that protected the powerful. I appreciate your visit, Elijah said carefully. But I think you misunderstand the situation. This isn't going away with a handshake and a wink, the mayor's facade of friendliness dropped. Let me be clear, Walker. My family has been in this town for generations. We've built it, funded it, led it. You've been here, what, a month? You don't want to make enemies here. I've faced worse enemies than small-town politicians, Elijah replied, standing. If I come for your son, Mayor Carson, I won't miss. The mayor stood as well, his face flushed with anger. That sounds remarkably like a threat, Commander. Just an observation, Elijah said, echoing the mayor's earlier words. After the mayor left, Amaya emerged from the hallway where she'd been listening. That was intense. That was informative, Elijah corrected. Now we know they're worried, and we know how far they'll go to protect Brett. What do we do now? We move forward with the plan. But carefully. The mayor just showed his hand. He'll use his influence to shut this down if he can. The next day, Amaya's suspension was indeed rescinded, though no explanation was offered. She returned to school to find things had shifted slightly. Students watched her with a mixture of curiosity and newfound respect. The story of her confrontation with Brett and his friends had spread, growing with each telling. During lunch, Grace slid into the seat across from her. Everyone's talking about you standing up to Brett, she said. It's kind of amazing. I haven't done anything yet, Amaya replied. But you will, Grace said with certainty. And I want to help. After school, Amaya met with Marina in the library. I need to know everything you've heard, she said quietly. Anything about Brett's plans, anything about what they're saying. About me, Marina glanced around nervously before speaking. They're scared, she whispered. Mason says Brett is worried about the notes. They don't know who sent them, or what evidence you have. What about the locker setup? Was that Brett's idea? Marina nodded. Troy suggested it. Brett executed it. Kyle was the lookout. Mason... She looked down. Mason knew about it but didn't participate. He told me after. And he still won't come. Forward? He's terrified of Brett. We all are. Amaya felt a flicker of frustration. Why? What does Brett have on everyone? It's not what he has on us. It's what his family can do. Mayor Carson has fired people for crossing him before. Teachers, police officers, city workers. No one wants to be next. That evening, Amaya worked late into the night, compiling their evidence into a more coherent narrative. The surveillance footage, the testimonies from Lexi and Marina, Mr. Daniels's videos. It was building into something substantial. When she finally went to bed, Amaya felt a sense of progress. The tide was beginning to turn. The breakthrough came, unexpectedly. Kevin Wells, a quiet junior known for his computer skills, approached Amaya after chemistry class. "I heard you're gathering evidence against Brett," he said, his voice low. "I might have something you'd be interested in." Amaya regarded him warily. "What kind of something?" "A private chat, Signal app. Brett and his friends plus some other elite students. They call it the Legacy Group." "How do you know about it?" Kevin looked embarrassed. I may have found a way to access Troy's phone remotely when he asked me to fix his laptop. He wasn't exactly careful with his passwords. Is that legal? Technically? No. But neither is what they did to you." Amaya considered this. "What's in this chat?" "Everything. Videos of hazing rituals, screenshots of test answers they've stolen, plans for parties where they spike drinks, and..." Kevin hesitated. "Conversations about you. Before and after the hair incident." Amaya's heart raced. "Can you show me?" Kevin nodded. "Not here. Meet me at the public library after school. Computer lab." That afternoon, Amaya sat next to Kevin as he logged into a laptop with multiple privacy shields running. "I downloaded everything," he explained. "It goes back over a year." What Kevin showed her made Amaya's blood run cold. The Legacy Group chat wasn't just a few boys being cruel. It was a coordinated network of Westbridge's elite students sharing racist, sexist, and violent content. They discussed bribing teachers for grades, blackmailing students who threatened to report them, and putting people in their place. And there, in text messages dated the day before her attack, was the smoking gun. "Brett, new girl needs to learn her lesson, tomorrow after practice. Troy, what are we thinking? Brett, that hair of hers, too proud of it. Let's fix that. Kyle, seriously? That's hardcore. Brett, trust me, no one will believe her. We'll just say it was a welcome prank that she agreed to. Mason, I don't know, man. Brett, don't chicken out now. Either you're with us or against us." Kevin scrolled through more recent messages showing Brett planning the locker setup, complete with details on how they'd stolen the microscope lenses and planted them. "This is..." Amaya couldn't find the words. "Criminal," Kevin finished for her. "Multiple counts, assault, theft, conspiracy." "Why are you showing me this? Why help me?" Kevin's expression darkened. "They hazed my little brother last year. Freshman. Initiation. Locked him in a storage closet overnight. He was so traumatized he transferred schools. No one believed us when we reported it." Amaya studied the chat logs, her mind racing. "Can I get copies of all this?" "Already done," Kevin said, handing her a USB drive. "But be careful. If they find out I gave you this..." "They won't," Amaya promised. "Thank you, Kevin." That night, Amaya showed everything to her father. Elijah reviewed the chat logs with growing anger. "This is it," he said finally. "This is what we needed." "But Amaya..." He looked at her seriously. "If you use this, they'll come after you hard. The mayor, the school, Brett and his friends, they'll all see you as a threat to their way of life." Amaya touched the dog tags around her neck, thinking of her mother, of all the people who had been silenced by fear. "Then let them," she said firmly. The next day at school, Amaya noticed a shift in Lexi's behavior. Usually confident and outspoken, Brett's ex-girlfriend was quiet, withdrawn. After their last class, Amaya found Lexi alone in the bathroom, crying. "What happened?" Amaya asked. Lexi looked up, her eyes red and swollen. "I went to a party last night. Brett was there with Heather. He saw me talking to Tom and just lost it. Started saying horrible things, pushed Tom against a wall." "Did he hurt you?" Lexi hesitated, then pulled up her sleeve to reveal finger-shaped bruises on her arm. "He grabbed me when I tried to intervene. Said if I didn't control myself, he'd make sure everyone saw some photos he has from when we were dating." Amaya felt a surge of anger. "That's blackmail." "That's Brett," Lexi said bitterly. "I ended up drinking too much, trying to forget. Tom took me home. My parents are furious. Lexi, this has to stop. Brett needs to face consequences. How? No one stands up to him. I am, Amaya said, and I could use your help. Would you be willing to testify about what he did? Not just to me, but to you too? Lexi looked terrified at the thought. I can't. Those photos. What if you could do it anonymously at first, just a written statement? After a moment, Lexi nodded slowly. I could do that. But Brett can never know it was me. He won't, Amaya promised, though she wasn't entirely sure she could keep that promise. Later that day, Amaya found a folded piece of paper in her locker. Inside was a photo of her and her father through the window of their house, taken at night. Beneath it, written in block letters, "Back off or else." A chill ran down Amaya's spine. She quickly folded the paper and put it in her pocket, looking around the hallway. No one seemed to be watching her, but the message was clear. They were escalating. When she got home, Amaya showed the threat to her father. Elijah's expression darkened as he studied the photo. They're watching the house, he said grimly. Time to upgrade our security. That night, Elijah installed motion sensor lights around the perimeter of their home and set up small cameras at key points. He also checked his gun safe, making sure his service pistol was secure but accessible if needed. I don't want you walking home alone anymore, he told Amaya. I'll pick you up after practice. Dad, I can't live in fear. It's not fear. It's tactics, he corrected. Never give your opponent an easy target. The next day, Grace introduced Amaya to someone unexpected, a former Westbridge student named James who had been expelled 2 years earlier. James has information, Grace explained as they met in a coffee shop off campus. James, a thin young man with nervous eyes, glanced around before speaking. Brett and his crew got me kicked out, he said quietly. I caught them cheating on the SATs, paid someone to take the test for them. When I threatened to report them, they planted drugs in my car. And you were expelled, Amaya guessed. James nodded. No one believed me. Brett's dad made sure of that. But I kept records, texts, emails, even a recording of Brett threatening me. Why didn't you take it to the police? I tried. The chief is Mayor Carson's golf buddy. My complaint mysteriously disappeared. James pulled out a flash drive. But I still have everything. Maybe it can help you where it couldn't help me. As Amaya built her case, more allies emerged. Grace agreed to testify about the bullying she'd witnessed. Marina, finding courage in numbers, said she would come forward about what Mason had told her. Even Kevin offered to explain how he discovered the signal chat. We're building a coalition, Amaya told her father. People who have been afraid to speak up alone are finding strength together. Elijah nodded approvingly. That's how real change happens. Not one hero, but many people standing together. With Kevin's help, Amaya gained access to the school's archived files. What they found was damning. Dozens of deleted complaints filed against Brett and other elite students over the past 5 years. Incidents ranging from vandalism to sexual harassment, all mysteriously resolved without disciplinary action. They've been covering for these kids for years, Kevin said as they reviewed the files in the public library. It's like a system designed to protect the privileged. Then we dismantle the system, Amaya replied. That weekend, an anonymous video appeared on Instagram and TikTok titled, "This is what the honor students of Westbridge do when the cameras are off." The heavily edited video showed Brett and his friends vandalizing the special education classroom, followed by clips of them mocking other students, planning hazing rituals, and bragging about getting away with everything because of their parents' influence. No faces were shown clearly, but the voices were unmistakable. The video went viral overnight. By Monday morning, it had over 50,000 views and was being shared by students across the district. Parents were calling the school demanding answers. Local news vans parked outside Westbridge Prep. Principal Harrison called an emergency assembly, where she urged students not to share unverified content and promised a full investigation. But the damage was done. Public opinion was shifting. Mayor Carson held a press conference denying any wrongdoing by his son and calling the video a malicious attempt to smear fine young men with bright futures. But his usual confidence seemed shaken. Brett and his friends walked the halls like hunted animals, suspicious of everyone, snapping at each other. Their once solid group was fracturing under pressure. "It's working," Grace told Amaya as they watched Brett argue with Troy near the cafeteria. "They're turning on each other." That night, Amaya stayed late at school to help set up for a pep rally. It was nearly 8 p.m. when she finished, the campus dark and mostly deserted. As she walked to the parking lot where her father was waiting, she heard footsteps behind her. Before she could turn, someone grabbed her from behind, a hand clamping over her mouth. Another figure appeared in front of her, wearing a ski mask. A third waited by a car with the engine running. "You think you're so smart," a muffled voice hissed in her ear. "Time to learn what happens to people who cross us." But Amaya wasn't the same girl who had been ambushed in the locker room. This time, she was ready. As her attacker dragged her toward the car, she went limp, dropping her weight suddenly. The move, taught by her father, caught her assailant off guard. In the split second his grip loosened, Amaya drove her elbow back into his solar plexus. The man grunted in pain, releasing her. The second attacker lunged forward, but Amaya was already moving. She ducked under his reach and delivered a palm strike to his nose, followed by a sweep kick that took his legs out from under him. As he fell, she heard a sickening crack, his wrist breaking as he tried to catch himself. The third man was already running toward her. Amaya stood her ground, center of gravity low, just as Elijah had taught her. When the attacker reached her, she used his momentum against him, redirecting his charge and sending him sprawling across the asphalt. Her first attacker had recovered and was coming at her again. Amaya reached into her pocket and pulled out the small canister of pepper spray her father had insisted she carry. One quick spray, and the man fell back, howling in pain. The third attacker scrambled to his feet and fled toward the waiting car. The second remained on the ground, clutching his broken wrist. The first was still blind from the pepper spray, staggering in circles. As the car peeled away, something fell from the second attacker's pocket. Amaya moved quickly to pick it up, a school board identification badge. The name on it read, Roger Kessler, board member. She looked down at the masked man still writhing in pain on the ground. "Who sent you?" she demanded, though she already knew the answer. The man said nothing, but as sirens approached, someone must have called the police. He struggled to his feet and limped away into the darkness. Elijah's car screeched into the parking lot and he leapt out, running to Amaya. "Are you hurt?" he asked, checking her for injuries. "I'm okay," she assured him, then held up the badge. "But I think we just caught a much bigger fish than Brett Carson." As the police arrived, Amaya realized the battle had changed. This wasn't just about a high school bully anymore. This was about a system of corruption that ran through the entire town, one that would stop at nothing to protect its own, and she had just declared war on all of it. The emergency room buzzed with activity as Amaya sat on an examination table, a nurse gently cleaning the scrapes on her knuckles. Elijah stood nearby, speaking in hushed tones with a police officer. The badge they'd found, belonging to school board member Roger Kessler, was now sealed in an evidence bag. "You're lucky," the nurse said, applying antiseptic. "Most people who get jumped in parking lots don't walk away with just scrapes." Amaya nodded, watching as her father handed the officer his phone. On it was footage from the dash cam in Elijah's car, a precaution he'd installed after the threat they'd received. The camera had captured part of the attack, including the moment when one of the assailants broke his wrist. "We'll need a formal statement," the officer told Elijah, "but this is enough to open an investigation." As they waited for the doctor to sign Amaya's release papers, Elijah stepped outside to make a call. He returned with a determined expression. "An old SEAL teammate works in digital forensics now," he explained. "He's going to analyze the surveillance tapes from nearby buildings and cross-reference cell phone GPS data from the area." "Can he do that legally?" Amaya asked. Elijah's mouth quirked. "Let's just say he has resources. By morning, we'll know exactly who was there." True to his word, by the time Amaya woke the next morning, Elijah had a list of names. The attackers had been identified through a combination of surveillance footage, cell phone locations, and facial recognition software. Thomas Kessler, Roger Kessler's nephew, Elijah said, pointing to the first name. Currently a senior at Westbridge. The one with the broken wrist. I didn't know he was connected to Brett, Amaya said, surprised. That's because he usually operates behind the scenes. The second attacker was Jack Wilson, another senior. The third, the one who got away, was none other than Troy Mitchell. Amaya's eyes widened. Brett's friend. So this was definitely connected. Without question, and there's more. Roger Kessler's badge was used to access the school at 7:30 p.m., right before the attack, but according to his official schedule, he was at a fundraising dinner across town, so someone stole his badge. Or he loaned it to them, Elijah suggested. Either way, it connects the school board directly to the attack. Before they could discuss further, Amaya's phone exploded with notifications. Videos of the parking lot fight had appeared on multiple social media platforms overnight. Someone had captured the entire confrontation on their phone from a nearby window. The headlines were unmistakable. Student cheerleader fends off attackers. School ties suspected. Navy SEAL's daughter uses combat training to defeat assailants. Westbridge prep scandal. Deapon's board member's nephew identified in attack. The video showed Amaya clearly defending herself against the masked attackers. Comments flooded in, most supporting Amaya and condemning the violence against her. Local news stations were requesting interviews. Parents were demanding an emergency school board meeting. This changes everything, Elijah said, scanning the coverage. Now it's not just our word against theirs. The whole community is watching. Principal Harrison called that afternoon, her voice strained. There will be an emergency school board meeting tomorrow evening, she informed them. Your presence is requested. We'll be there, Elijah assured her. With all our evidence. The next day, Amaya returned to school to find the atmosphere dramatically changed. Students moved aside as she walked the halls, some whispering, others offering supportive nods or words of encouragement. The video had transformed her overnight from victim to symbol of resistance. Even more surprising was the reaction from the cheer squad. Coach Williams pulled Amaya aside before first period. I owe you an apology, the coach said, her usual brusque manner softened by genuine regret. I should have done more when you first reported what Brett and his friends did to you. Why didn't you? Amaya asked directly. Coach Williams sighed. Fear. Complacency. I've been here 15 years and seen how the system works. It was easier to look the other way. She straightened her shoulders. But that ends now. The team and I will be at the board meeting tonight. You have our support. Throughout the day, more students approached Amaya, some to apologize for not believing her, others to share their own stories of intimidation by Brett and his circle. The dam of silence had finally broken. Brett was noticeably absent, as were Troy and several other members of their group. Marina found Amaya at lunch to explain. Thomas Kessler is in the hospital, she said quietly. Brett and Troy are being questioned by police. Mason told me the mayor is trying to keep it quiet, but it's not working. That evening, the school auditorium was packed for the emergency board meeting. Rows of seats were filled with students, parents, teachers, and community members. Local news cameras lined the back wall. At the front, the school board members sat behind a long table, their expressions grave. Roger Kessler's seat was conspicuously empty. When Amaya and Elijah entered, a hush fell over the crowd, followed by a wave of whispers. They took their seats in the front row, directly facing the board. Behind them, Amaya sensed rather than saw the support gathering, Coach Williams and the cheer squad, Mr. Daniels, Grace, Kevin, and dozens of other students she barely knew. The board president, a stern woman named Dr. Patricia Reynolds, called the meeting to order. We are here to address serious allegations of student misconduct and potential administrative negligence, she began. These are troubling times for our school community. Mayor Carson was allowed to speak first. In his tailored suit and practiced smile, he projected confidence, but Amaya noticed the strain around his eyes. What we have here is a regrettable series of misunderstandings, he said smoothly. Pranks that went too far, perhaps, but being blown out of proportion by social media and outside agitators. Murmurs of dissent rippled through the crowd. Dr. Reynolds silenced them with a raised hand. "Ms. Walker," she said, turning to Amaya, "you have requested time to present your perspective. The floor is yours." Amaya stood, feeling all eyes on her. She had prepared for this moment, rehearsing with her father, but now that it was here, her mouth felt dry. She touched the dog tags around her neck and took a deep breath. 3 months ago, I moved to Westbridge with my father after his retirement. "From the Navy SEALs," she began. "Since then, I've been systematically targeted, harassed, and ultimately assaulted, first by Brett Carson and his friends, who cut my hair against my will, and then by masked attackers in the school parking lot." Her voice gained strength as she continued, detailing the escalating pattern of bullying, the school's failure to intervene, and the evidence they had gathered. When she mentioned the school board badge found at the scene of the attack, gasps echoed through the auditorium. "But this isn't just about me," Amaya said, her gaze sweeping the room. "This is about a system that has protected certain students at the expense of everyone else. A system that values donations over dignity, influence over integrity." She nodded to Kevin, who activated a laptop connected to the auditorium's projection system. On the screen appeared a carefully edited compilation of evidence, surveillance footage, screenshots from the Legacy group chat, testimony from other students. Finally, Amaya played an audio clip that silenced the room completely. Brett's voice, crystal clear, laughing about the hair-cutting incident. She screamed like we were killing her. It was just hair. Not my fault if she can't take a joke. Another clip followed. "We own this school. My dad owns this town. No one's going to believe some random black girl over us." The auditorium erupted. Parents shouted questions at the board. Dr. Reynolds banged her gavel repeatedly, trying to restore order. Through the chaos, Amaya remained standing, her expression resolute. When order was finally restored, Dr. Reynolds spoke, her voice tight with controlled anger. "In light of this evidence, the board will take immediate action. Brett Carson, Troy Mitchell, Kyle Bennett, and Thomas Kessler are suspended pending a full investigation. Additionally, Roger Kessler is temporarily removed from his board duties, while his potential involvement is examined." Mayor Carson leapt to his feet. "This is outrageous. You can't suspend my son based on edited videos and hearsay." "With all due respect, Mayor," Dr. Reynolds replied coldly, "we absolutely can. And if the police investigation confirms what we've seen here tonight, suspension will be the least of his concerns." As the meeting continued, more students came forward, sharing stories of intimidation and cover-ups. Parents demanded answers about deleted complaints and ignored reports. Teachers spoke of pressure to change grades for certain students. By the end of the night, it was clear that the carefully maintained facade of Westbridge Prep had cracked beyond repair. As people filed out, many stopped to thank Amaya or offer words of support. "You did it," Grace said, hugging her. "You actually did it." But Amaya knew this was just the beginning. The system wouldn't change overnight, and those with power wouldn't surrender it easily. Still, for the first time since moving to Westbridge, she felt something that had been missing: hope. The following day, Brett was taken in for formal questioning by police. The video of him being escorted from his home, scowling at news cameras, went viral almost immediately. His father's influence couldn't shield him from the growing evidence or public scrutiny. In a shocking development, Brett's composure cracked during questioning. According to leaked reports, he had erupted in rage, screaming that he was being set up by a ghetto girl and demanding his father fix this like everything else. The outburst, captured on police recording devices, only reinforced the image of entitlement and prejudice that Amaya's evidence had painted. The judge ordered a psychological evaluation, adding fuel to the media firestorm surrounding the case. That weekend, Elijah took Amaya to the mountains for a much-needed escape from the chaos. They hiked to a remote clearing where Elijah had set up a small training area, a reminder of their backyard sessions but with the added peace of nature surrounding them. "How are you holding up?" he asked as they practiced meditation techniques he'd learned during his SEAL training. "I'm okay," Amaya said, her eyes closed as she focused on her breathing. "Sometimes it feels overwhelming. All the attention, the Interviews, the people looking to me as some kind of symbol. That's the burden of leadership, Elijah said quietly. You stood up when others wouldn't. Now they're following your example. I don't feel like a leader. I just wanted justice. The best leaders often don't set out to lead. They simply stand for what's right and others follow. As they continued their training, Amaya found her mind drifting to thoughts of her mother. The anniversary of her death was approaching, a wound still fresh for both of them. I wish Mom could see this, she said, as they sat by a small campfire that evening. See me fighting back instead of feeling helpless. Elijah's expression softened. She can see it, baby girl, and she's proud of you, just like I am. I still feel so angry sometimes, Amaya admitted. Not just about Brett and what he did, but about Mom, about how she was taken from us. The anger is natural, Elijah said, but don't let it consume you. Your mother never did, even in the darkest times. They sat in silence for a while, the crackling fire and distant owl calls the only sounds in the gathering darkness. When we get home, Elijah said finally, there's something I want to show you. Something of your mother's that I've been saving, for the right time. The walkers returned from their mountain retreat to find Westbridge transformed. Yellow Justice for Amaya ribbons adorned trees and lampposts throughout town. Local businesses displayed signs supporting school reform. The community that had once silently enabled Brett's behavior was now loudly condemning it. But the most significant change awaited them at home. A formal letter from the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division announcing an investigation into systemic racism and student abuse at Westbridge Preparatory Academy. How did this happen? Amaya asked, reading the letter with wide eyes. I may have sent our evidence to a former SEAL teammate who now works at the DOJ, Elijah admitted with a small smile. But they wouldn't be here if the claims weren't credible. The following week, federal investigators arrived at the school. Principal Harrison was placed on administrative leave while they examined records, interviewed students and staff, and reviewed the mountain of evidence that had emerged since Amaya's case became public. Local news reported that several staff members had resigned rather than face questioning. Board member Roger Kessler had stepped down entirely, citing health concerns, but fooling no one. At a televised community hearing, Elijah was asked to testify about his daughter's experience. He stood before the crowded chamber, his military, bearing evidence as he spoke. I've served this country in some of the most dangerous places on earth, he began. I've faced enemy fire, survived ambushes, and completed missions most people couldn't imagine. But nothing prepared me for the helplessness of watching my daughter suffer while those in power looked the other way. The room was silent as he continued, describing the systematic failure of the school and town leadership to protect not just Amaya, but countless other students who had been victimized over the years. If we can face war zones to protect America's future, he concluded, his voice ringing with conviction, we sure as hell can face a school board to protect our children. The applause was deafening. Even hardened reporters wiped away tears. Amaya, watching from the front row, had never been prouder to be Elijah Walker's daughter. Marina's testimony came next, hesitant at first, then increasingly confident as she detailed what she knew about Brett's actions and Mason's involvement. I was afraid, she admitted. We all were. Brett and his friends made it clear what happened to people who crossed them. She paused, gathering courage. But I'm more afraid of what happens if we stay silent, if we let this continue. After the hearing, Marina approached Amaya in the hallway. Mason wants to talk to you, she said. He's ready to come forward about everything. Mason's testimony proved crucial. As Brett's former friend, he provided insider details about the Legacy Group's activities, including evidence that Brett had stolen tests, blackmailed teachers, and orchestrated systematic harassment of students he viewed as threats or outsiders. I'm not proud of what I did, or what I didn't do, Mason said, his voice shaking. But I want to make it right. With Mason's cooperation, other members of Brett's inner circle began to break ranks. Kyle admitted to his role in the haircutting incident, claiming he'd been afraid of becoming a target himself if he refused. Several athletes came forward with stories of hazing rituals they'd been forced to participate in, or risk losing their positions on teams. The cascade of revelations led to a special town hall meeting where Amaya was invited to speak. The auditorium was even more packed than it had been for the school board meeting, with television cameras broadcasting the event live across the region. Amaya stood at the podium, taking in the sea of faces, many supportive, some curious, a few still hostile. She thought of how far she'd come from that first day at Westbridge, afraid but determined not to show it. When Brett Carson and his friends attacked me, she began, they thought they were erasing me, putting me in my place, teaching me a lesson. She touched her now growing hair, the short crop a reminder of what she'd endured. Instead, they sharpened me. They made me into the weapon that would ultimately expose them. The crowd listened in rapt silence as she described not just her own experience, but the larger system of privilege and protection that had enabled such behavior for generations. This isn't just about holding a few boys accountable, she said. It's about dismantling the structures that taught them they were untouchable in the first place. Her speech was shared millions of times on social media. National morning shows requested interviews. Overnight, Amaya Walker became more than a local story. She was a symbol of resistance against entrenched systems of power and privilege. Mayor Carson's downfall came swiftly after federal investigators uncovered evidence of bribes, hush money, and obstruction of justice. Emails revealed his direct intervention in multiple cases involving his son and other elite students, including pressure on the police department to drop investigations and on the school to alter records. In a terse press conference, the mayor announced his resignation, claiming he wanted to focus on his family during this difficult time. But everyone knew the truth. The FBI was closing in, and he was cutting a deal. Brett's trial became a media spectacle. Despite his father's best efforts to shield him, the evidence was overwhelming. The unedited video of the haircutting attack, testimonies from multiple witnesses, and Brett's own incriminating messages left little room for doubt. What shocked the community most, however, were the additional revelations that emerged during the proceedings. A hidden camera ring in the girls' locker room, a fight club operating out of an abandoned warehouse, systematic theft of test answers, distributed to favored students. When the judge announced the verdict, guilty on all counts, Brett's carefully maintained facade finally shattered completely. He screamed obscenities as officers led him away, his final words to Amaya a chilling promise. "This isn't over." But for all practical purposes, it was. Brett was sentenced to 18 months in juvenile detention, with additional community service and mandatory counseling. Troy and Kyle received lesser sentences but similar requirements. Thomas Kessler faced separate charges for the parking lot attack. The school underwent a complete leadership overhaul. Principal Harrison resigned rather than face termination. The school board was dissolved and reconstituted with strict new ethics guidelines. Most significantly, a new principal was appointed, Dr. Sophia Washington, a woman of color with a background in restorative justice and a zero-tolerance policy for bullying. Throughout the tumult, Amaya maintained her position on the cheer squad. Coach Williams, one of the few staff members to keep her job, had become a fierce advocate for change within the athletic department. As the state cheerleading championships approached, Amaya threw herself into practice, finding solace in the discipline and teamwork required. The squad, now free from Brett's toxic influence, rallied around her with genuine support. The night before the competition, Elijah finally showed Amaya what he'd mentioned during their mountain retreat, a letter from her mother, written shortly before her death and sealed in an envelope marked, "For Amaya, when she needs it most." With trembling hands, Amaya opened it, recognizing her mother's elegant handwriting. "My dearest Amaya, if you're reading this, it means you're facing something that's testing your strength and spirit. Your father and I always knew you would face challenges, some because of who you are, others because of a world that isn't always kind or fair. Remember this, you come from warriors, not just your father with his medals and missions, but generations of strong women who fought battles without recognition or fanfare. Our daughter will be a warrior, I told your father. Show her how to fight, but also how to heal. Teach her that true strength isn't about dominating others, but about standing firm in your truth, even when the world tries to silence you. Whatever battle you're fighting now, Know that I am with you in the curl of your hair, in the set of your jaw, in the fire of your spirit. You are never alone, with endless love and pride, Mom. Tears streamed down Amaya's face as she clutched the letter. Elijah put his arm around her, his own eyes glistening. She knew, Amaya whispered. Somehow, she knew I'd need this. Your mother always saw further than the rest of us, Elijah said softly. It's what made her special. It's what makes you special, too. The next day, the Westbridge Prep Cheer Squad took the state championship. As Amaya stood on the podium, her teammates lifting her on their shoulders, she felt her mother's presence more strongly than ever before. Spring brought college acceptance letters flooding Amaya's mailbox. Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Princeton, top. Schools across the country offered full scholarships, citing her academic achievements and extraordinary leadership in the face of adversity. They're practically begging you to attend, Grace marveled as they sorted through the offers in Amaya's bedroom. Amaya nodded, but her expression remained thoughtful. It's an amazing opportunity. But what? This is everything you've worked for. It feels wrong to leave now, Amaya admitted. We've started something important here. The work isn't finished. What had begun as Amaya's personal fight for justice had evolved into something larger. With Grace's help, she had founded Phoenix Uprising, a student organization dedicated to school reform and anti-bullying initiatives. Already, they had chapters forming in neighboring districts. You could do even more with a degree from Harvard, Grace pointed out. Think bigger picture. Maybe, Amaya conceded. I just need time to think about it. That decision became more complicated when a new threat emerged. An anonymous online group calling itself Legacy Watch began targeting Phoenix Uprising members with harassment and threats. Their profile picture was a phoenix being shot down by an arrow, a clear message aimed at Amaya's organization. Kevin discovered the group first, tracking their activities across platforms. It's a collection of expelled students and Brett's supporters, he reported during an emergency meeting at Amaya's house. They're angry about the changes at school and blaming you for ruining their futures. The harassment escalated quickly. Phoenix Uprising's social media accounts were flooded with hateful comments. Members received anonymous threats. Then came the most personal attack. Amaya's private texts, family photos, and personal information were leaked online. How did they get this? She asked Kevin, horrified at seeing private conversations with her father and friends exposed for anyone to see. Someone got into your accounts, Kevin said grimly. They're good, using sophisticated methods to hide their tracks. But I'm better. For a brief, dark moment, Amaya considered quitting, deleting Phoenix Uprising, accepting a scholarship to a distant college, leaving Westbridge and its troubles behind. The constant battle was exhausting. But then Grace, Marina, and Kevin showed up at her door one evening, determined expressions on their faces. We're not letting them win, Grace declared. Not after everything we've fought for. Marina nodded. We've secured all our accounts with better protection. Kevin's tracking their IP addresses. And we've got your back, Kevin added. Always. Their unwavering support reignited Amaya's determination. She might have started this fight alone, but she wasn't alone anymore. The next major test came at the school's New Beginnings Gala, a fundraiser organized by the new administration to support diversity initiatives and anti-bullying programs. Amaya attended as the guest of honor, wearing a sleek silver dress that complemented her now stylish short hair. The event was masked, a nod to the tradition of spring masquerades at Westbridge. As Amaya mingled with supporters, a tall figure, in a black mask, approached her. Quite the achievement, the stranger said, his voice vaguely familiar. Turning the whole town upside down in less than a year. It was overdue for a shakeup, Amaya replied, trying to place the voice. My brother thought so too, right before you destroyed him. Amaya tensed, suddenly recognizing the speaker, Alan Carson, Brett's older brother, who had recently returned to town after serving time for drug charges. Your brother destroyed himself, she said evenly. His choices, his consequences. Alan stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. You destroyed my family. I'll return the favor." Before Amaya could respond, Mr. Daniels appeared at her side. "Everything okay here?" he asked, his expression making it clear he suspected otherwise. "Just catching up," Alan said with a false smile, then melted back into the crowd. Later that night, Amaya told her father about the encounter. Elijah's expression darkened. "We need to take this seriously," he said. "Alan Carson has a history of violence, and he clearly blames you for his family's downfall. What do we do? What SEALs always do when facing a new threat: prepare, plan, and set the terms of engagement." Together, they crafted what Elijah called their final mission, a digital sting operation designed to identify and expose the members of Legacy Watch. With Kevin's technical expertise, they created decoy accounts and planted false information that only someone monitoring Amaya's communications would find. The trap worked perfectly. Within days, they had identified multiple members of Legacy Watch, including Alan Carson as the ringleader. More surprisingly, they discovered that Roger Kessler, the former board member, had been funding the group's activities. When they took their evidence to the FBI agents still investigating corruption in Westbridge, the response was swift. Alan Carson and Roger Kessler were arrested for cyberstalking, harassment, and conspiracy. The remaining members of Legacy Watch scattered, their anonymous protection shattered. The story made national headlines again. Phoenix rises, Howa High. School student dismantled 2 generations of corruption. Digital warrior, Amaya Walker exposes cyberbullying ring led by disgraced mayor's son. SEAL training pays off. Father-daughter team trap online harassers. In the aftermath, Amaya finally made her decision. She accepted Stanford's offer, close enough to visit home regularly, but far enough to start fresh. More importantly, she created a virtual network to continue her advocacy work, naming it Walker Protocol in honor of her father's training. "It's not just about Westbridge anymore," she explained to Elijah as they discussed her plans. "This problem exists everywhere. We need to create a system that can be implemented in any school, any community." Elijah nodded, pride evident in his eyes. "Your mother would be so proud of the woman you've become." In a gesture that shocked Amaya, the town council voted to rename the street leading to Westbridge Prep as Walker Way, honoring both Elijah's military service and Amaya's courage in standing up to injustice. The school itself underwent a symbolic transformation as well. The gymnasium, once dominated by trophies won by Brett and his teammates, now featured a mural of a phoenix rising from ashes, with Amaya's quote beneath it, "They tried to erase me. Instead, they sharpened me." At the final pep rally of the year, Principal Washington invited Amaya to the stage along with everyone who had helped expose the truth: Marina, Grace, Kevin, Lexi, Mr. Daniels, and others who had found their voices along the way. "These students and teachers remind us that courage isn't the absence of fear," Principal Washington told the assembly. "It's the decision that something else is more important than fear." From the bleachers, Elijah watched with quiet pride. His daughter had transformed from a new girl afraid to show weakness into a leader who had changed an entire community. The cost had been high, but the victory was undeniable. As the sun set on Amaya's last day at Westbridge, she found herself on the school roof, a quiet spot she'd discovered during her darkest days. The town spread out below her, peaceful in the golden light. She heard footsteps and turned to see a freshman girl she didn't recognize approach hesitantly. "You're her, right?" the girl asked. "The girl who fought back?" Amaya smiled, thinking of all she had endured and overcome. "That's one way to put it. I just wanted to say thank you," the girl continued. "My old school. I had problems like yours, but knowing what you did here, it gave me courage to start over." As they talked, Amaya realized this was her true legacy. Not the renamed street, or the mural, or even Phoenix Uprising, but the courage she had inspired in others to stand up for themselves. When the girl left, Amaya remained on the roof, watching the stars appear one by one. She touched the dog tag still hanging around her neck, thinking of her mother's letter and her father's lessons. "Strength isn't just how loud you shout. she whispered to the night sky. It's how far your silence carries. Below, the lights of Westbridge twinkled like fallen stars, no longer representing a system of fear and silence, but the beginning of something new. A community finding its voice, one brave truth at a time. What would you have done if faced with such injustice? Remain silent or stand your ground like Amaya? If this story of courage and righteous vengeance moved you, hit that like button, subscribe for more powerful narratives, and share your thoughts in the comments below.